Hello, we're doing another gun-related video. As you can see, this here is Strike Industries SlideComp compensator, or SlideComp, excuse me. It mounts to their slide instead of having a threaded barrel, like something like this, where you have to have a threaded barrel, and then the compensator is mounted to the barrel. And in this case, we're using the standard barrel, and the compensator is mounted to the front of the slide. And now I've heard some comments, it's not really a real compensator, which I understand those comments, because you see, normally you would expect a compensator to, the hole going through it to be the same diameter as the barrel, and that way you keep a good tight seal behind the bullet as it goes past the comps, and that gas can come up out of the compensator and hold the muzzle down. Whereas with this, you've got a lot of open space in there once the bullet comes out of the muzzle. It's blasting through there. There's a big wide opening. And some people have said that they think it affects the accuracy. Some people, I guess I saw a review on YouTube, and a guy was talking like it changed his point of impact by a good solid foot, at least at 25 yards, which I can understand that from a theoretical point of view. You've got the bullet exiting the muzzle, and you've got all those high pressure gases exiting, blowing past it as it exits. And with this on, you've got a chamber here, can create some extra turbulence, and maybe kind of like a blast of wind hitting the bullet right after it comes out of the muzzle, kind of pushing it up. And it would be interesting to see if there's a real difference between different bullet weights and so forth. It would seem to me with a 147 grain bullet, where you've got like a longer bullet with more surface area to act on, and it's going through the muzzle, going through the compensator for a longer period of time, you've got more time for the gases to be blowing it up. And whereas a shorter 115, 124 grain bullet is going faster, there wouldn't be as much time for that. So it'd be interesting to know how it really affected different types of bullets and bullet shapes. I was actually at the range the other day, I put a red dot on my AR-15, and I was really there just to sight in with my rifle. But I took this along to check it out. Probably put at least 150 grains, 150 rounds of ammo through it, all different kinds of bullet weights, like 115 grain. I had just a bag full of mixed ammo that I found laying around, some 115 grain full metal jacket, 147 grain plus P HST, which is my normal carry load, 127 grain plus P plus Ranger, 124 grain Golden Saber plus P, some 115 grain Federal 9BP LE plus P plus ammo, a couple rounds of Hornady Critical Defense. So it's a whole bunch of different kinds of ammo, and all I did was just dump them out. And I had about 4 magazines with me, and just put like 5 or 6 rounds in each magazine and shoot it. I was only shooting at about 10 yards. I was mainly just wanting to make sure it worked, and check it out. And I was kind of on a time schedule anyways, so I wasn't really trying to do some kind of super scientific testing about the point of impact and all that. For what I was doing at fairly close ranges, like 10 yards, I wasn't seeing anything that couldn't be attributed to the fact that I was shooting all different kinds of ammo, and I was just kind of cranking away. And plus I had just switched back to the OEM trigger from the one I was using, so it was any kind of difference in the point of impact was probably more me and just not shooting very well sometimes, jerking the trigger or whatever. I didn't, but the bullets were all where you would expect them to be. And so I personally would have to do some more testing before I could say anything about the point of impact shift or anything like that. One thing I wanted to show you, though, Okay, I refucked it. Using this NDZ Performance guide rod. It's their Gen 4 rod, but has a bigger base on it to fit the the deeper cutout that they have in the barrels now on the Gen 4, Gen 5 pistols. But you need a Gen 3 guide rod to work with this compensator because it fills in the space here in the front of the slide. But I found an old like Gen 3 guide rod I had. I'm not sure if it was NDZ Performance or Lone Wolf or what, but I took the front end off of it and it screwed right into here, and so that way you can have the bigger base, which keeps the guide rod more parallel to the barrel, and still have the smaller front end on it. And the guys at NDZ Performance messaged me back on Facebook and said that if you call your order in, they will make one for you like this that has the Gen 4 base on it and the smaller Gen 3 washer on the front end. One thing I should say is that I bought this SlideComp off of eBay, and when I got it, one of the screws was missing. This one here, when I was tightening it down, I stripped it out. I think it may have already been on the road being stripped out, but when I got it, I think that's probably what the guy did to the other one. But I didn't put any Loctite, thread locker or anything on it. This one here, just a tiny fraction of a turn loose when I got home to check it out. That might have just been because I didn't tighten it up as well as the others before we went, But you can see it fits really well. It doesn't match up perfectly with the front of the slide the way it would on a Gen 4, but on the other hand, it's not rubbing up against the slide. I've heard some people aren't too happy with that, but people have been wondering if you could use these on Gen 4 or Gen 5 pistols, and this is obviously a Gen 5, the 19x, and it fits perfectly. So I just thought I would share that. I didn't have any kind of issues with it, and it locks up nice and tight. I'll have to do some more testing to see if it's really some kind of super improvement on controllability or anything. It definitely adds a few ounces of weight out there on the front, which for me personally I like. For concealment use, some people might not like that, but I kind of like the way it balances the pistol a little better, and it does give you the ability to work the slide by pressing it against something else. You can rack the slide with one hand just by pressing it up against something. If you were kneeling, you could press it on the ground, you could press it up against the side of the wall. I have a little compartment in between the seats in my car where I can carry it, and before I draw it, I can just press down on it and the chamber's around. For me personally, with a Glock, when I'm carrying it without it being in a holster that covers the trigger guard, I won't carry it with around in the chamber. Have it floating around the glove compartment or somewhere in your car with something getting stuck in the trigger. Something like a Beretta. I have a Beretta 92 FS slide with a reduced profile Wilson combat safety on it. You can hardly flip it off when you want to sometimes. You could take that thing, throw it in a glove compartment or something for years and it's never going to go off, But with a Glock, I'm a little more careful with stuff like that. The other thing I wanted to talk about, I guess, is got this Glock 34, the Gen 5 extended slide, slide release, slide stop, as some people insist we call it. But I really like it. There are some things that I think aren't really a big issue in a real gunfight. I actually was carrying this before with this side cut off, so if I was shooting it with a high thumbs grip, even if I had my thumb in tight, instead of holding it out away like a lot of people tell you have to do, it wasn't going to keep the slide from locking open. And the only disadvantage is it's harder to lock the slide open if you want to. You still could do it with this side. Certainly with this one, with the extended lever you can. But honestly, locking your slide open is something that's more of a range thing than a gunfight thing. So it's not really that big an issue. The only time you might want to lock your slide open in a gunfight is if you had like a double feed malfunction and you wanted to lock the slide back before you cleared it, which this would make very easy to do. On the other hand, you can find videos out there showing you how, even you have a double feed, you don't actually have to lock the slide back to clear that. You can just press the mag release, rip that magazine out of there, and you don't even have to worry about locking the slide open. People, this obsession with being able to lock the slide open, that's a training thing. That's a range thing where you want to show some range master or somebody, hey, look, it's open, it's empty. In a gunfight, there's no need for that. So it's another one of those things where people like to be able to do it in a training situation, but even though it makes things convenient in a training situation, there's no actual need for it in a gunfight. But having this extended lever on there, if you are using a thumbs, high thumbs grip, you have to keep your thumb out to the side to keep from riding on it, which to me, that's kind of one of those things, I have to remind myself to do. And I don't really like things I have to remind myself about, because in the real world, especially in a gunfight, you're not going to remember that. On the other hand, it could also be said in a real gunfight, if you've got 3 revolvers full of ammo like this, what are the odds you're going to have to worry about the slide walking to the rear on an empty magazine anyways? In real gunfights, nobody, very rarely reloads. It's Reed Hendricks, just made a video about that, reminding people about that. You can use a single stack gun with like 8 rounds in it, and you're probably not going to run out of ammo in most normal gunfights. So a lot of that stuff is more training oriented than it is gunfight oriented. Same thing with being able to do the one-handed manipulations, like I was talking about with pressing this up against something. If you look at some of the studies that have been done, you're not finding people needing to do single-handed malfunction clearance drills and stuff in real gunfights. A lot of people, even instructors who like to talk about those statistics and the real gunfight statistics and the skills you really need to practice, they still kind of gloss over that because they're trying to sell you, signature sights that you can, hook on stuff and use them as a charging handle. That's one of the things people say about the original sights on a Glock. The original sights on the early generations, at least, did have a big failing because they had a big giant dot, and if you lined it up really in the U on the back, you were shooting high, which the Gen 5 pistols have fixed. But there are millions of Glocks out there, hundreds of thousands at least. I don't know all the numbers that they have out there that still have the original polymer sights on them, and the sights have not been ripped loose from people racking them off and stuff all the time. I think the new ones especially, they're a little higher profile it seems, and you could easily use those to rack the slide one-handed off of a belt or something if you needed to, and it's not going to just rip off as soon as you do it a couple of times. Now if you're doing it all the time, hundreds of times a day, or going to a class where you're doing that, and that's what you're focused on is racking the rear sight off of stuff, you're going to rip the polymer sights off eventually. But that's again not a real world thing. It's a training junkie kind of thing that in the real world, in real gunfights, you don't see happening. You could go out there with this magazine with no slide stop lever on this gun at all. I actually have carried Glocks before with the slide stop lever removed, and it doesn't matter. It's just like an AK. If it shoots empty, you have to rack the slide when you put the new mag in. And you've got people, like James Shader out there, people like that, they'll teach you no matter what you do when you do a reload to rack the slide. It's just a lot of the stuff, you need to just kind of find what works for you. The same thing with the thumbs forward grip. People will tell you that you have to do it like this. This is the correct grip. But you'll find other people, like Masad Ayub, who shoot with the thumbs locked down. And for a lot of people, that actually gives them better results. And when you're using a piece of equipment like this, you can have the benefits of having it really easy to use, and yet at the same time not interfering with your shooting just by shooting with your thumbs locked down. And for a lot of people, it actually gives them a stronger grip, depending on what pistol you're talking about, how their hands are shaped and how their grip is shaped. I've shot a lot of pistols through the years that I actually can control them better, especially lightweight pistols with really heavy ammo, with my thumbs locked down when trying to hold it like this. A lot of new shooters don't really get that much pressure from this left hand. That's something that veteran shooters have practiced a lot and worked on, but this is not how you get a good strong grip, normally speaking, for most people. And when human beings grip something, especially if somebody's trying to take it out of their hand or something, they don't go like this and hold it like this. They go like this, and they have their thumb locked down. Who was it? Pat Casper. Who was it? Bob Casper. I'm sorry. Pat Crawford made the knives. Bob Casper was a Marine Corps knife fighting instructor, and I used to read articles by him where he wouldn't even teach like when you're using a knife. Most people use like a saber grip, and all he ever used was the hammer grip, because in sparring it was too easy to knock the knife out of your hand like this. Now there are a lot of people who disagree with that, and you did have more control with a saber grip than trying to thrust and so forth, being able to drive the tip down. But up close, you're trying to hold on to something, you want your thumb locked down. And it's amazing to me, some of the instructors who talk about the biomechanics and how the hand works and how your thumb wants to like work in concert with everything else, that they'll tell you, no, your thumb doesn't do anything when you're gripping a pistol. And for a lot of people it does. So if you want to put something like this on your pistol and shoot with the thumbs locked down, that's not going to get you killed in a real gunfight. The idea that everybody has to hold the pistol the exact same way and use the exact same stuff on their pistol, the exact same slide stops. You're not allowed to refer to it as slide release and things like that, and only if you're holding it like this is that the correct grip. Of course they remind you, you have to hold your thumb out like this. For me, naturally I try to do it like this, especially being an old 1911 shooter. That's one pistol where that high thumbs grip really does work really well for me. But I'm still kind of experimenting with this. I have a love-hate relationship with Glock pistols and the way they feel, though this one feels better than most I've ever had. But having the thumbs locked down lets you control it, for all practical purposes just as well as something like this where you're trying to grip it like this and push in with your thumb out here. And you have to adopt a very specific kind of grip to do that, whereas sometimes you can grip it a lot more naturally with your thumbs locked down, which I don't know why I got off on that and going off on everything. But there's a lot of stuff that you have to figure out for yourself with the gun, I guess, is the main point. Because a lot of what you see on YouTube, you got people telling you have to get rid of your original sights on your Glock, because they're going to fall off. They're not going to fall off. And I've driven some about before, and they're hard to get out. If you want to use them as a charging handle instead of a set of sights, you're going to have issues. But do you need to use your Glock sights as a charging handle to survive a gunfight? Despite what some of the people out there who are trying to sell you replacement sights would like you to think, no. I mean, I've even seen instructors say that they can't imagine a fighting pistol these days being sold with sights that you can't use that way. And yet there are lots and lots of people out there who have used 1911s with the Novak low mount sights. It's actually much nicer and more comfortable to be able to, like, say you have a stovepipe malfunction, you just slide your hand across and rip it off of there, and without snagging your hand on the rear sights. Especially if you're using coming over the top to wrap the slide. If you have nice smooth sights, something that's not super aggressive, it's much easier. If you use a slingshot method, it's not as big a deal. But all this stuff, anytime you talk about any of these devices or this, or whatever, you're going to have people saying, well, why do you need that, or you shouldn't do that, or like there's only one way to do things. And first of all, a lot of this stuff is just for fun and enjoyment, but people need to be able to think for themselves. It's good to know what all the experts say. I use experts in quotations because some of them, you don't know how much of an expert they are on anything. First of all, if they say there's only one way to do anything, when it comes to guns, they're not an expert. right off the bat, because there was too many different people with too many different size, shaped hands, and different shape of pistols and so forth. You can't say those kind of things. There is no just one perfect way to do everything. And it's good to know why people say the things they do and what they're saying it for. But you have to be able to think for yourself and find what works for you. If something works for you, the fact that somebody else is saying, "Oh no, that doesn't work. You can't do it that way," doesn't really matter. You don't want to just dismiss what they say, just because you don't like listening to people, because it's too important a subject to be like that. On the other hand, it's too important a subject for you to just do things their way when you can have a different way that works better for you. So don't be afraid to try things, different things. You'll find lots of people who tell you, "Oh, if you have this extended slide stop lever on here." I think John Farnham has written some articles about that, just like, "Oh my, it's going to hang up on everything and it's in the way," and whatever. I mean, how is that going to get snagged on anything? I don't know. But people like to make these dramatic statements about stuff, and as long as it works for you, I would say go out and do it. And I got way off on this video from talking about what I was starting with, which was the SlideComp. But if you're wondering if it works on a Gen 5 pistol, it sure does. And I plan to do a lot more shooting with it. I had my Surefire X300 on here when I was shooting it, and the lens stayed perfectly clean. It's really, it is really nice to have something that extends that barrel out. And even with the light on here, you still could rack it off of stuff, so I don't think that would be an issue. You could still smack it in the corner of a door or at a steep angle into the ground or something. But I think it's a pretty cool product. I don't know that it's some super dramatic improvement in things, but you'll never know if you like it until you check it out, I guess. And one thing I should point out too, the guys at Strike Industries, I told them I needed a couple of screws, and I was asking if I could buy a set of replacement screws, and the guy asked me for my address and told me he would just send them out to me, which I thought was pretty cool. But like you can see, with one missing and no thread locker on them, it stayed perfectly tight. So I think it's a pretty cool product. And at least I'm carrying it on my pistol, regardless of what all the people out there who think, all this stuff is crazy have to say about it. Anyways, I'll see you later.